the things that struck me about this whole issue is the ignorance of the population, including my own ignorance. And it was Sister Penda and her husband Rudy who really brought this issue to the fore. I really would like Sister Penda to speak to that in particular, and the need for education.
Thank you so much. And please, I think I'm coming down with a cold, so please forgive my hoarseness. The sister wants me to talk about the need for education. I find it very strange that as I went along trying to get support for this monument to be placed where it should be, I found that very few people, if any at all, knew anything about what happened in 1823. And that was very disturbing to me. As a matter of fact, when I first realized that the monument was going to have a new home, which was on Carifesta Avenue, I called the mayor's office and we set up a meeting because I thought the city council would know more about the land issues than I did. And it was at that point that the mayor was able to shed some light and enlighten me even further and had documents on the turning of the sun, etc. And as we did research, Brother Elton was able to put up the archive document that showed the photograph of the then President Jack Dew actually with a shovel in his hand turning the salt and burying the coins. So I found it indeed rather disturbing that people knew nothing about this. And when I asked what they knew about 1823, the answer was nothing. So every time we would have to stop and do a mini lecture, trying to get them to understand. And I want you to know something categorically, that there is absolutely no one that we have spoken to and explained to them what happened in 1823. As long as they grasp what happened in 1823, the first thing that comes after, what is it going to be doing at Carifesta Avenue? Why not big ground? I mean, it's like they're in awe that such an awful thing could happen. So as we continued along, we said, no, this is really serious. And that is when we started working really hard. Sister Sharon and everybody came on board. I must also say at this meeting that I have the highest regard for young Jai Paul Sharma, because when the issue was raised by the APNU, it was Mr. Christopher Jones who brought up the issue in Parliament as a question without notice. And I was enlightened by Jai Paul that you could only have two statements. And he felt exactly the same way I did about the fact that there was already a home for that monument. And we saw no reason why the minister would even have to advertise for a place to put that monument when a place was already designated. I mean, let's get this straight. In the year 2000, it was not just the president going to turn the sod. You had all the stakeholders present. You had the cabinet ministers, you had the public. There was great consultation with the various historians at that time. So this was a collective effort, and we couldn't understand. So what he did, he had the next Tuesday, he opened this program to discuss the 1823 monument, and I called him and said, would you give us airtime? And they gracefully gave us last Saturday and promised another time. So, Mr. Sharma, I congratulate you and I thank you so much for that. Childish behavior of not only adults, but who are public officials acting in the name of our nation. And some of these individuals have PhDs, they have MDs and other things, but how could they conjure up one analysis for our social discontent? Whenever we say that there's something wrong, the only thing they come up with, in quotation, it is political. And that alone shows their political naivety. You have the right to talk about what is wrong, and especially, as I mentioned earlier, because of the fact that the sun is already turned. So, Sister Sharon, thank you.
And thank you, Sister Penda. Mayor Green is in a very challenging situation, not only of being
to persuade, invite our young people in particular of every race, religion, and grouping to join the coalition because, as my sister said, this is not an African thing as far as I'm concerned. We need to see this assault in its wider context. A government that is insensitive and disrespectful to the people of this country and are using the state media and the awesome power of the state to do its own dose of brainwashing. We've got to thank the people who are around this table, People's Parliament, Frederick Kassoum, and others, for being courageous and at least being willing to write the truth against a background where we are the only country in the Caribbean, and I said we put this in its wider context, where there's one state-controlled radio station which has already infested our young people who don't know the truth. Many young people in this country don't know much about the 1823 monument and the incident, and are therefore not enthusiastic about what we're talking about today. So education is vital because a country without its history don't exist. And we are the victims of other people, as happened in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia, when other people sent out their messages and, in a sense, controlled and conditioned our very thinking. And therefore, the education is very important. A lot has already been said about this thing. It's an assault. And there was a very good editorial in the Tablet News a few weeks ago, December 9th, on this monument, and I would recommend our young people in particular to read about it. There was no consultation. The fact that, as the sister said, on the 1st of August, I was present when the then President, the then Minister of Culture, Gail Teixeira, the Permanent Secretary, Pete Hooker, Dr. Rose, all agreed on the 1st of August, before the sun came up, that 1823 was an important date in our history, and that we should honor those persons who sacrificed their lives so that others, whether they be Indian, Chinese, Madeiran, or what, could come and enjoy the benefits of this country. Coins were buried as a symbolic gesture by Jack Joe, the then mayor. Why therefore you go to Carifesta? It's beyond explanation. There's no historical connection with the struggles of this country with Carifesta. Senses to recognize that they're a minority government, that the majority of people in this country, in spite of their propaganda machine and the billions they had available for the election campaign of November 11,
Yes.
said,
November 20.
sorry?
November 20th.
November 20th, 2011, said eloquently, we prefer other people to manage the affairs of this country so we can extricate ourselves from corruption and nonsense. And I hope therefore that we see this in its wider. It's not an African thing. It's much more than that. And I hope therefore that this destruction and distortion of our history is corrected, and that Anthony, who appears to be one of the decent people, will take counsel from us on this coalition and have the manliness and the courage to say to the cabal that we made a mistake and we are prepared to correct it. History has a way of repeating itself. My sister talked about the Critchlow statue. Many young people don't know that statue was hurriedly erected at a place that the majority of workers and the trade unions did not want it erected. It should be erected at the Border Green where Critchlow has his heyday, made his speeches. The PP then, in defiance of the wishes of the majority of people in Georgetown on the Tuesday, went to the public buildings. We need to know it's a consistent assault on the people of this country. And when that statue was commissioned, the entire opposition, Burnham, Polydor, and all the trade union leaders boycotted the ceremony. So what we see here is simply a repeat of this insensitivity and disrespect for the people of Guyana. I hope this is not present an African thing. It's much broader than that. It's disrespect for the people of this country. And I congratulate the group, and I hope that people like my good friend Frederick Kasumi and others will keep writing, and that our young people will keep reading, so that they are part of an uprising against wrongdoings and disrespect.